awe haya e haya heo no tawe no kananas koma haya heo oe haya e haya oe haya e haya heo oe haya e haya heo ke koe me kananas koma haya heo oe haya e haya oe haya e haya heo oe haya e haya heo ke kawino kananas koma haya heo oe haya e haya oe haya e haya heo oe haya e haya heo Nemoso kananas koma haya heo oe haya e haya oe haya e haya heo oe haya e haya heo. Ayan taon na gawin na ski. Kikoime nimasum tetamanos de permitsinan. Okay, I'm ready. Am I live?
Okay, you take a drink here.
Okay. So I want to share a story. Stories of teachings of the grandfathers and how the world was divided. So one of the things that happened to me is I was sick and I had cancer, and I was told at the hospital that I didn't have very long to live, and I didn't believe, I guess, Western doctors. So I went to a night lodge to go and ask if it was true. The spirit said I had to change my life or I wasn't going to make it. I went to another night lodge and they told me the same thing. I went to a third one and they said the same thing. And for a while I thought, well, I'll just go, trying to prepare to leave the world, and I decided that there was nobody in this world who would love my children like I love them. So I said I'm not gonna go. And I told the Creator, if He lets me live and lets me see my children and my grandchildren grow up, then I'll work for Him. And so during that time, there was many people I'd run into, and they'd ask me how's my cancer, and I didn't want to hear it because I understood at that time that if I keep thinking about it, oh well, the cancer, I'll just feed it and it'll keep growing. So I told my husband that we'll stay in the house and we won't open the door and we won't answer the phone. And I just wanted to pray, and I just wanted to just be with myself and Creator and Mother Earth. And so during that time, I had gotten sick for at home, and I didn't get out of bed for 2 days. And during that time when I couldn't lift my arms or my legs, nothing was working. My mind was so clear, my thoughts were so clear, and I kept thinking about healing. I kept telling myself that I'm getting better, and I was so shocked that my mind and my thoughts were so clear, even though I couldn't get out of bed. And during one of those times, I remember I was laying in the bed and I was facing the east, and it's really big. I remember I heard somebody talking, and I looked over, and I saw this spirit, the one I called grandfather, standing beside me, and they call him Mr. Helmuskwa. He used to be Chief Big Bear, but I didn't know who he was at the time. And he told me, "Come, somebody wants to see you." And I said, "Okay." And this big light came right through the wall, just as though there was a window and the sun was shining in the room really bright. And this big light came to my chest and it pulled my spirit right out of my body. And we traveled in this tunnel, and I could see people moving, walking in this tunnel, and we just bypassed all these people. Finally, we made it to the doorway, and we got into the doorway of the spirit world. Everything was so beautiful. I couldn't believe the colors, but more important, it was how I felt. And during this time, I was so shocked because my mind was so clear and I had no worry, no fear. I had no thoughts in my mind, and I couldn't believe like I had no thoughts. My mind was empty. And me and grandfather were there. The colors were so bright, so vivid. I just saw all this light, this color, all these different colors, so bright, so vivid. And grandfather was sitting beside me, and he said, "Watch, grandchild." He said, "This is the beginning of how all creation came onto the earth." And I looked at him and I said, "Okay." All of a sudden, I heard this sound like a vibration, and I saw this light coming, and it was moving. It was flowing like this, and it stopped right in front of us, and that light changed into a form of a man. So I think, though, that if Creator went to see the deer, he would change himself to a form of a deer. If the Creator went to see the fish, he would change himself to a form of a fish. So he came in the form of a of a human being made like a man. And he grabbed a piece of his heart and he pulled it off, held it in his hands, and he started talking to this light. And he said, "Look, this is where you're going. This is your family." And he went like this, and this little light started going down right in front of us. And I wanted to see where this light went, and I leaned over and I saw Mother Earth and I saw the clouds, and I sat back. And grandfather said, "The very first gift that the Creator gifted to us was love. The second gift was free will. Creator also gave to us to know the difference of right and wrong, of truth and lie, of when you are safe and when you're in danger." And in this time, there was just like there was so much information. There was so much information and stories, just like they were being placed in my body. Like the sickness was removed, and there was so many teachings and so many stories, and it seemed like it just happened in a few minutes. But in the spirit time, the spirits can tell you a story that would take a human being maybe 2 or 3 hours, and tell it to you in a matter of minutes. So they brought me back to my body, and I remember when I came back in my body, I felt like my body was cold and I couldn't breathe. I had a real hard time catching my breath, and I couldn't even speak. And I remember I called for my husband to come, and I could barely call his name, and he came, and I was crying, and I told him what I saw. And it was probably about, I think, about 3 months later, and I was getting well. I was getting healed. I think it took me about maybe 4.5 months. I went to a sacred site. My grandmother had told me, she said, Creator and Mother Earth made sacred sites all over the world. And when you need healing, you go to these places. So I went to this place every day for about 4.5 months. And, and I was healed. And I'm thankful for that. And the spirits kept talking to me in that time. I felt like for 4 years after that happened, like I was halfway in between the spirit world and here, and I could hear these spirits teaching me. I remember the next part of the the next part that happened was about 3 months later. And in this dream, I was so excited, and there was like I was so happy in my dreams, and I was walking on the land, and everywhere I'd go, these people would ask me questions. They would ask me about healing, and I don't. The main thing that I was telling these people is I would say, ask Creator. The Creator can help you. Ask the Creator, and the Creator can help you. So, anyways, while these people were asking me in the dream, grandfather came and he said, "Come, grandchild, we're going to show you something. But we want you to go back and tell the people." And I said, "Okay." So he started walking towards the south, and I started following him. I could see the land, I could see the grass. It was getting evening time. And we got to where we were going, and I looked on the ground. There was a perfect circle on the ground with a fire. It wasn't a big bonfire, it was a low fire. But it was a perfect circle. It was a this real beautiful perfect circle with this fire. Grandfather looks at me again and he says, "We're going to show you something." But there was only me and him. He said, "We're going to show you something." And I was looking at him, "But we want you to go back and tell the people." And I said, "Okay." All of a sudden, when I turned and looked back, I saw all these old men, and I saw them wearing their clothes from a long time ago. I saw their beadwork, and there was no empty space in that circle. There was all these old men that were standing around that fire. And grandfather said, pointed to the fire, he said, "Look, grandchild, look." He said, "This is love. We are only brought here with one emotion." And he said, "Everything else, it came up from there." And when he did this with his fingers, and he went like this, that smoke followed his fingers. And he said, "Every other emotion came out of love." Why do we get angry? We get angry because we love ourselves, because we love someone, because we love an idea, or we love our life's work. Anger cannot exist without love. It is impossible. And he said, "We want you to go back and tell the people that every sickness in the body is an emotion that is not being let out." And he was talking longer, and I couldn't believe what was happening. I was really shocked. And I didn't remember the whole thing right away. I started remembering pieces of it later, but I remembered that first part. And then it was a while later. I don't remember when the third dream came. When the third dream came, I remember I was working in corrections, and there was a young man there. And this young man that I was working with in corrections, I was telling the young men, "We're gonna leave for a while." I remember the grandfathers told me I had to come to the West Coast, and that they wanted me to come over here and help the people. So I said okay, and I just made a guess during that time that we would be gone about 3 months, which was a very good guess because we were gone about that long, traveling from community to community, having prayer ceremonies and teachings. And so before I left, I told them I was going to leave. And one of the young men, he said, "Can I ask you a question?" He said, "Because um, I'm going to get out of jail, and this is going to be the last time I'll see you because you won't be here when I get released. I get released in 2 weeks." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "I don't have tobacco, but can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Okay, yeah." So, I started talking with him. One of the things that he asked me was, he said, "I get out of jail in 2 weeks." And he said, "I want to ask you before I get out of jail." He said, "What do I need to do to continue asking the Creator for forgiveness?" And he said, "I killed a man." And I was really shocked. And I said, and he said, "I killed a man." He said, "I've been here 9 years. I got to finish my childhood sentence here." And I asked him how old he was. So he was 20. And so he killed a man when he was 11. And uh, I remember I heard my grandmother's voice really clear. And she said, "Don't talk about things that you don't know anything about, because you can really hurt the people. You can confuse them. You can only speak about what you know about." So I told this young man, I don't know anything about this. I cannot speak about it because I don't know anything about it. But what I can do for you is I'm going to pray for you that Creator will guide you and lead you to somebody who that person will help you. So that's what I can do to help you today. And he said, okay. And this young man asked me, he said, I asked him, I said, did you see your mom while you were here, your family? And he said, really happy. He said, I saw my mom 4 times while he was there. And even though he was smiling, I could feel that he wanted to cry. And and he asked me, he said, how does it look out there? How do people dress? He said, I'm really scared to get out of jail. He said, I'm really scared. He said, I'm the oldest of 7 children. And he said, I don't know how my brothers and sisters look. I don't know how they look. He said, I don't even have pictures of them. And he said, I'm scared. I'm scared to get out of jail. And I told him, we talked a little bit more. I hugged him and I told him, everywhere I go, I'll think about you. Everywhere I go, I'll say some prayers for you. And so I was really, I didn't really know how to feel. So I remember I left the jail that time. And when I got to my truck, I closed the door and this loud cry came out. It was so loud. I couldn't even believe that I could cry like that because I never even cried like that when my dad died. And my dad was one of the people that I loved the most. And I was asking myself in my mind, why are you crying like that, Daphie? Why are you crying? And my body wouldn't stop crying and so loud. Years later, I realized that that young man couldn't cry. And I took his tears and I cried for him that day. And I remember I was still crying. I cried all the way home. And it's about a 20-minute drive, 20 some minute drive. And I started to go up this one hill. And on the map, it says Prongi Hill. But the grandfathers told me the hill is called Where the Baby Eagles Learn How to Fly. As I was driving up that hill, I asked the Creator, and I said, Creator, I said, people are always saying that we come from one of the most peaceful people. People are always saying that we lived in harmony with all life, all creation. And I said, is this even a true story or is it a lie? Because how is it possible that these boys that I'm working with and that are in jail, that they come from peace and harmony? How many of them were in there for really violent crimes, for murder, for robbery? And I said, how is it possible that they came from peace and harmony? And I kept crying and I couldn't stop crying. And I remember I got home that day, and when I came inside the house, I was still crying. And I had told my husband, I told Buck what happened. And I was crying and he hugged me and he said, go lay down, I'll feed the kids. And I was like that. And I was so much tears. And I went and laid down and I was, I cried myself to sleep. And as soon as I fell asleep, um, grandfather picked me up and he took me and we flew around the world 4 times really, really fast. I saw so many places. I saw India. They took me to Tibet. I saw a monastery. And I remember when I saw that monastery, I went into this monastery way up high in the mountains in a Tibetan monastery. And I was standing in that hallway and I looked down that hallway and somebody was telling me to wait there. And grandfather was with me. And as we were waiting, I looked at the tiles. And one of those tiles caught my attention, and it was of a camel and a baby camel. And they were all handmade tiles on that wall. And I thought, well, that's really strange because there's no camels here and there's no palm trees. Why do they have a picture of a camel and a baby camel and a palm tree? And all of a sudden, this this spirit comes out. He opens this big door, and there was windows here, and I could see the mountains. That whole wall was full of windows, and those tiles were on this side. And he said, okay, we're ready. You can come in. And I went in, and then and then I even traveled in that dream. We went to Africa. And I remember the sun was going down. We were getting ready to go in a sweat, their kind of sweat. And I saw this hut made out of clay and a doorway, just similar to how First Nations make their sweat. And there was African men, and I saw their clothing, and there was a big tree in front of that doorway of their sweat, and we were just getting ready to go in. And that's all I remember. I remember flying over India, and I saw all these people talking, so many people. There were so many places that we traveled to, and while we were traveling, and I saw all these things, all of a sudden we stopped really fast, and I went forward because we were moving so fast. And I looked around. I saw sand everywhere. Everywhere I looked, there was sand. And we were in a desert on the other side of the world. Sometimes when I tell this story, people think it's about Jesus. It's not about Jesus. And in our traditional way, they call him Jessa. And they said the stories of Jessa, Wisakechak's brother. So this is not about Jesus. Grandfather said, we're going to show you how the world was divided. And he said, the negative one, the evil one, he wanted the people to listen to him instead of Creator. So he came to the people and he lied to them. And he said, did you know that God loves the human beings more than he loves anything else in creation, and that you are his children? And he said, pretty soon the human beings started to believe this lie. And when the human beings believed this lie, they were taken from the rest of creation. They were put in a place all by themselves. And he said, this is why still to this day, the human beings are walking around. Why am I alive? I feel like I don't have a home. I feel like I don't have a family. And I feel like I don't belong. And they're always constantly searching. Grandfather said, what they're truly searching for is to belong back in creation, to be equal with the four-legged, the winged one, the insects, the water creatures, the plants, the trees, the rocks. This is what they're truly searching for, and to be equal with all life. This is what they're truly searching for. And we started traveling again. Grandfather said, next grandchild, the negative one, the evil one. He went to all the colors of the people, and he went and lied to them. He said, hey, you white people, you're different. Hey, you black people, you're different. Hey, you red people, you're different. Hey, you yellow people, you're different. You're all different. He said, pretty soon, grandchild, they started to believe this lie. No, the white people, they're better, they're stronger. No, the black people, they're better, they're stronger. No, the red people, they're better, they're stronger. No, the yellow people, they're better, they're stronger. And when grandfather was telling me this, everything that he talked about, I was guilty of it. I always used to think, I'm very strange. I'm never going to go home. I don't have a home. I don't have a family. I felt really strange. And I actually believed that second part too, where I believed First Nations people were better and were stronger, and our spirituality was better. And so everything he spoke about, I was guilty of it. And I felt really bad. So he told me in this dream, it switched over, and he said, go to your mom's. And I was like, just like I was in my house. And he said, go to your mom's. And I said, oh, you guys are always sending me somewhere. Now what? Now what? Because I had all this guilt because I was guilty of everything that he talked about. And so I got in the vehicle and I was like, oh, these grandfathers are always sending me somewhere. I started driving. I went to my mom's house and I was acting like a spoiled kid, stomping. And grandfather said, walk this way. And I was stomping. And I was like, oh, always sending me somewhere. Now what? Now what? And he said, no, stop there. And I stopped. And I said, okay, I better try and think what Creator's trying to teach me and what the grandfather is trying to teach me. And I looked and I saw horses. I saw a black horse, a white horse, a red horse. I saw a yellow horse, a black and brown horse, a gray horse. And you don't never see. And grandfather said human beings are the only thing that separates by color. Nothing else in creation separates by color. And you don't ever see horses saying, oh, the white horse is on this side of the pasture, the black one's here, the red one's here, and the yellow one's here. A horse is a horse. It doesn't matter what color it is. A horse is a horse. And beings are the only thing in all creation that separates by color. And that is because of that lie. So after that, we started traveling again. And this time, we went to all the tribes all over the world. Grandfather said, next grandchild. He said, the negative one, the evil one. He went to all the tribes all over the world and he went and lied to them. And he said, I know all the tribes all over the world. Of all of the tribes, he said, your tribe is the best. Everything you guys do is the best. The way you pray is the best. He said, pretty soon, grandchild, they started to believe this lie and all of the tribes started separating. And he said, before this lie came about, when there was a crisis on the earth, all of the different tribes and the different colors of the people, they came together and they prayed in their own way, the way that was given to their family from the beginning of time. He said, all of the families, they were given a ceremony and a prayerful way. And he said, and that belonged to their family. And when they would come together, they would pray in their own way, the way that was given to their family from the beginning of time. And he said, and this is not happening anymore because of this division. After that, we started traveling again, and we this time we went to the reserves, to the villages, to the communities. And he said, the negative one, the evil one, he went to all of the houses and he went to visit the people. And he said, oh, I know everybody in your community. I know everybody in your reserve. I know everybody in your village, of this whole reserve, this whole community. Your family is the best. The way you guys pray is the best. Everything you guys do is the best. He said, pretty soon, grandchild, they started to believe this lie and the people started separating and they stopped praying together. And it's true, go to different communities, they have, all of these separate, oh, don't go to this sweat, don't go to that ceremony, don't go to that church. And it's true, everything he talks about, everything he was speaking about, all these people are saying, don't go to that church. No, 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 not that sweat. No, 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 not that ceremony. So this negative one, he was so happy and he said, look what I did. I divided the world and I only told four lies. Grandfather said there was a great lying spirit that traveled the whole world. And he said that the time when this happened is when the native people stopped living in teepees and they started living in log cabins. This was the timeline of that great lying spirit that traveled all over the world and created all of this division. Grandfather said, oh, that negative one, that evil, and he was so happy. He said, well, let me tell some more lies. And he said, oh, in this tribe, the men are stronger. No, the women are stronger. No, the men are stronger. No, the women are stronger. Pretty soon, they divided the male and the female. And oh, that negative one, that evil, and he was so happy. He said, look what I did. I divided the world. So it's important that we understand that division and the division that we carry inside of ourselves, and we start to take it apart and we understand that we are equal to all life. We're equal to the four-legged, the winged one, the insects, the water creatures, the plants, the trees, the rocks, and that all human beings and all life was given the same size spirit. And there's no such a thing as a human being who was born with a brighter spirit. That's a lie. It doesn't exist. We're all given the same size spirit, as long along with the four-legged winged one, insects, water creatures, the plants, the trees, the rocks. So I'm thankful to be here and I'm thankful to be able to share the story of how the world was divided. And I hope that the people will really think about these teachings, and I hope that they're helpful to them because they've been very helpful to me. I've worked so very hard on letting go of that division in myself and my work and what I do, and to remember that all life is equal. Hi, hi.